Host claims that war is the biggest grievance of men, bigger than any grievance of women. You don't think that I'm right. You think that war is the biggest grievance of all ordinary people. The men who dies in battle, the mothers, daughters, sisters, friend that loses a loved one, the casualties that are not fighting but can't escape and or subjected to abuse or torture, the people that die in the aftermath of war from hunger, public execution, and diseases.
Yeah.
Okay, so really quick, who do you think is the primary victim of war, men or women?
As I said, all.
So you don't think it's men?
No.
Okay.
I don't think it's men. I don't think it's only men.
Yeah, so Denmark, it's not far from Ukraine, right? So currently there's a military conflict in Ukraine.
Definitely.
Let me just ask, since this is perhaps a bit more relevant to you, who's the primary victim of the Ukraine war, men or women?
I think it's all of them.
So even if I pointed towards, I don't know the exact numbers, but there's maybe tens of thousands, maybe I don't know if it's in the hundreds of thousands of male military deaths on both sides collectively,
Yes.
and there's probably no female military deaths at all.
No, most of the women are in the resistance.
Most of the women in Ukraine are in the resistance?
No, most of the casualties that are women are in the resistance.
I'm sorry, what? What do you mean? The resistance?
When Russia invaded,
are you talking about Ukrainian militias?
Well, I would call them resistance people because
Ukraine has a professional army.
I know they have a professional army, but they also have quite a lot of patriotism, and the women wanted to fight. The women who wants to fight that are willingly engaging in battle.
Sure. So what percentage of
I'm not sure.
Even granting this, what percentage of female military casualties are there on the Ukrainian side?
I have no idea, actually. I have no idea. I do know that most of the people fighting are men, and I also know most of the Russians that are fighting and dying are men, mainly from smaller villages out in the middle of bumfuck.
Okay, so knowing that, let's say that 99% of the military casualties are men, you're still prepared to say that it's the primary victim of war is
all.
Both.
Yeah,
both men and women.
Yes, they just get hit in different ways because, well, I do have the numbers from the Second World War at least. Yeah.
What about on the Russian side?
No.
Because so Russia's the invading country, so
Russia's they also lost quite a lot of soldiers. They're bringing in North Koreans now, so that's exciting. That war keeps getting more and more exciting.
So is it even on the Russian side? It's all two. It's not the men that are
what dying.
We can't do split just because it's uneven. Maybe I can try to fix it, but
yeah. No, but I have the numbers from the Second World War if you're interested in the casualties there.
Sure, let's hear it.
Yeah. Or was it? It's somewhere, the soldiers who died, it was somewhere between 22 and 30 million, according to the UN. So they don't really, they have the numbers. The Jews that were executed, that was like 5-6 million. Those were divided between, those were both men and women that died in concentration camps. But the real kicker of war is always that in the aftermath, when everything was like blown into pieces and everybody died, about 19 million people starved to death or died from diseases, both. Well, since all the soldiers had died at that point, men, women, children, old people, all of them. And I think it just comes to show that men aren't the only ones who are victims of war, even though those are the ones dying in the trenches.
I mean, it's amazing to me that you're struggling with this concept. So even looking at World War II, what is it, 20 million military deaths?
22 to 30 million.
Yeah, well then there's like the casualties, which includes like injuries, maiming, this sort of thing, which is even higher if you're factoring casualties and if you're defining that as injuries also.
No, I don't think so.
20 million men died in World War II.
Yeah.
Military men.
Yeah.
how can you possibly come to the conclusion that this doesn't have a greater disproportional impact on men?
Because the proportions are so little. From
The proportions are so little.
Yeah. I mean, if you count it from 19 million to 22 million.
What do you mean?
19 million people died in the aftermath of war. Those were not soldiers.
Yeah, but it was probably, there was some distribution, like it might have slightly been a bit more women in the civilian population that died, but it's also boys and girls, so children.
Boys and girls, children.
That would have been
old people.
Boys and girls and elderly people, that would have been distributed fairly equally.
Yeah, assuming that they weren't out fighting. I mean, the soldiers did become pretty young at some point.
So, that's ridiculous.
Well, it's ridiculous to put children into war, but there were also resistance people in Denmark.
Remember earlier in the conversation when your friend said, "Oh, well, men are viewed as," I don't know if the exact word, but men are viewed as disposable.
Yeah. He does.
You won't even grant, in this situation, that men are the primary victims of war. So you clearly view men as disposable because you can't even grant. You can't even grant in the incontrovertible situation where it's evidently clear that men are the primary victims of something. You won't even grant that men are the primary victims of war.
I don't think men are disposable.
But you're saying all people suffer in war.
All people suffer in war. Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
But you can't even grant that all people suffer in war.
Have you ever had a loved one passed away?
Quite a few.
If I stubbed my toe and my toe hurts, is this a greater suffering than you losing a parent?
Oh, that depends which parent.
Let's assume one that you loved.
I would say yeah.
Okay. So, women feeling bad, not as bad as men dying in war.
No, I don't think that. But women did die.
At the same rates of men?
I'm not sure, actually.
How are you not sure?
Because...
Who fights wars? Who fights wars?
Men fight wars.
Okay, who dies in war?
Most.
Who dies in war?
Most of the soldiers who die in war are men. I will give you that.
Okay, so men are the primary victims of war.
Well, that is only if you don't count everybody who's also dying.
Okay,
all the casualties of war.
So primary, I'll grant you there are secondary victims of war.
But
civilians.
why are they not as important? I think they are as important.
It's not about being more or less important.
But if you say men are disposable in war, then you also say...
That's how society views men. They've throughout... It's literally, as evidenced by history, men have been the cannon fodder for military conflicts since the beginning of humankind. We didn't send women out to war, we sent men out to war as cannon fodder.
No, you didn't allow women to go out to war
because you're
cannon fodder.
Oh my God.
Like that's also
that's a female privilege. Yeah. That's a privilege that you guys didn't have to be sent to war.
That is a pretty good privilege, actually.
Are you being facetious or do you actually agree?
I don't think anyone should be fighting in a war. Well, unless they really want to, if they are professional soldiers. I think that most people should just run from war, to be honest. I think
this is so incoherent.
Why is it incoherent?
So
what is it that is incoherent?
I agree with you, because war and military conflict is inevitable. Oh. I agree with you. War is bad. There shouldn't be war. There should be world peace. But we live in a world where the reality is there's geopolitical conflicts, border disputes, this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. War is inevitable. And we're not going to do away with it, and war is going to happen.
Yes.
Right.
Unfortunately, I'm agreeing with you on that one.